Hey guys, it's Chandler, and welcome to the Healing Heroes.
I promise you.
I'm Chandler Stroud, an executive, wife, and busy mom of two, who after years of living with anxiety, health struggles, and an unshakable feeling like I should be happier, made a profound discovery that changed everything. Join me on a journey where unexpected paths lead to healing and more happiness. On this show, we'll explore unconventional ways to unlock more joy in your own life with the help of my very own healers and trusted advisors, the Healing Heroes. Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode. And today I am thrilled to have Kate DeMello back with us to discuss a topic that in my mind is one of, if not the most critical area of focus for anyone's healing journey based on what I've learned throughout my own experience relating to this topic. I'm sure some of you might cringe or roll your eyes hearing the term inner child, since it feels very rooted in psychotherapy and may feel a bit woo-woo or unrelatable. I certainly felt that way before embarking on my path to healing and discovering more joy, so I get it. No judgment here, and if younger self feels better, we can certainly do that. Totally acceptable. But I can tell you now that it continues to be a focus area for me in therapy and in my day-to-day, and has been one of the most effective ways I've been able to calm my nervous system, lessen my anxiety, and improve my self-worth amongst many other benefits. And that's saying something, since I still have a lot of work to do in this area. And how do I know? Well, just recently, my therapist, Hero Jen, and I made the observation that in all of my EMDR sessions, I always talk about my child self in the third person. And I always come upon a scene we're working through from my childhood from this other vantage point than from within myself, the child experiencing that scene in the moment. So, in other words, I struggle to feel safe putting myself back in the shoes of me as a little girl and have pretty much disassociated. The good news with this, though, is that at least we know the task at hand is now to integrate both parts of me, my younger self and my adult self, back into a single person. And I've come to believe that that will unlock another level of happiness that I haven't yet experienced based on what I know and have done thus far. So I am looking forward to the day that I successfully can do that. But for now, all of that is to say that I am very, very excited to learn more about this topic from Kate in our conversation today. But first, let me quickly offer a refresher on Kate's background for new listeners. Kate DeMello is a business empowerment and embodiment coach who describes herself as an inner power activator on a mission to help women return home to the power that resides within. She has a master's in counseling and is certified in 20 plus coaching modalities, including inner child, parts work, and breath work. Kate, I am so excited to have you back on the show. Thank you for being with us today.
Oh my God, I'm so excited to be here, and this is truly one of my favorite topics to talk about. So this is going to be fun.
Yes, it is. It's mine as well. And I have so much to learn. I mean, I have my own questions that I think listeners will be asking. So I know we have a lot to cover. Let's dive in. To start, can you explain what the inner child really means? Why is this concept so central in healing and embodiment work?
I absolutely love this question because I think it will help to really understand why this is so important in the work that we do. And I feel like it can be so accessible to people. So I do just want to make a distinction that there is inner child work and practices, and then there is inner child trauma work and practices. And so, there's like that deeper level of healing the heavier trauma, the capital T trauma. And they essentially kind of inform our beliefs and our paradigms on how we view the world around us. And, when you're a child, you have such a self-centered perspective. And I don't mean that as like you're selfish. Like what I mean by self-centered is you view the world as reflecting back on you. And so what happens is from the ages of, honestly, sometimes it really is in utero and the experiences that you absorb because you're in the mother's belly. And if she experiences anything, it really can start there because you're also experiencing the cortisol of stress and the different chemicals that are being released in the body during, big T and little t traumatic incidences or even just nervous system jarring incidents. And so it stems from this belief and understanding of the body that as a child, the experiences that you go through that essentially rewire your nervous system, they become what inform your actions as an adult because they become your patterns. They become the way that you relate to and interact with the world around you. And so the reason that it's so important to understand inner child work is because it's the undercurrent of how you are functioning as an adult in your life. And so you really have to start to understand the beliefs that you picked up about yourself and the world around you, the way that you learned to relate to yourself and the world around you, and to start to understand how that shows up in everyday life. So to give a little bit more of a tangible example, if you're someone who's starting to notice that there's a discrepancy or a difference between your response to things and the situation itself, your inner child or for people who might have a hard time hearing the term inner child, your nervous system or your childhood beliefs may be taking over and running the show and creating your actions.
That's a great way of breaking that down so that listeners can really understand it and is super clear. So thank you for sharing. Why would someone want to form a relationship with their younger self or inner child?
Yeah, I love this so much because, and I want to refer back to you being like, some people may feel a little cringe at the term inner child. And so I think what's really important to understand is that when you form a relationship with your inner child, you are learning how to reparent yourself and change your relationship with yourself from one of shame, judgment, frustration, anger, hiding, from that into love, compassion, seeing all different parts of yourself and allowing yourself to actually grow. The things that are holding us back is our relationship to ourselves. I'll give some tangible examples. Like you go out on a date or you're in an interview or some sort of situation where there's pressure and you notice yourself changing your response in the meeting or in the date or whatever, just to make sure that that person likes you because you can't handle rejection. You want to start to form a relationship with that wounded part of yourself that needs that approval. And so often try so hard, like the inner critic is another buzzword, and we try so hard to change ourselves through judgment, but nothing can change in judgment. And so the inner child work, it creates such incredible and massive space for compassion and love and gentleness and gratitude and all of the conditions that allow for growth and change. And so you now start to enter into these arenas with more compassion for yourself and the ability to make mistakes because you know you're going to love yourself. You're not going to abandon yourself regardless of the outcome.
Wow, that was so beautifully said and so moving. Truly, I mean, it would make anyone want to have a relationship with their younger self so that they can give themselves that level of compassion that you're talking about. And I think it's really interesting because, again, I always say as part of my journey in creating the show that I didn't know I wasn't giving myself that compassion. I always thought like, I like myself, I do self-care, I do all these things. But when I did the EMDR and did the somatic experiences with the MFR and acupuncture, whatever it might be, I started to really realize that no, there were some pretty strong beliefs that I created and was in some ways passed down in my childhood. And it's really powerful to think about it in the space that you're referring to, where you can create this arena of just self-acceptance and love, and that the inner child is a really powerful tool in getting there.
It really is. And I love that you said that about passing things down, because our parents did the best that they could. The adults in our lives, our caregivers, they did the absolute best that they could with the tools that they have. But they were only able to pass along to us what they knew and what they learned. And so then we, in our own lives, and this is where it does get a little spiritual, but we in our own lives, we have our own lessons to learn. We have our own interpretation of what we learned from them. We have our own application to ourselves and our own worldview. And so what ends up happening is, our parents are mind readers. Parents, whoever is listening, you're supposed to mess up. You are going. So that you're not doing anything wrong, but you can't be perfect. And so kids have to learn different things about the world around them. And sometimes they make interpretations that affect the way that they see the world in good ways and in bad ways. And that is all part of life. And so this process is learning how to be with yourself differently so that you can start to show up in the way that you want to show up. You can start to forgive yourself more easily and let go of getting it wrong and let go of messing up because, again, I'm not a parent, I'm an aunt, but even still, I'll catch myself getting frustrated with my niece or nephew and wishing that I'd handled things differently. And the position I'm in, sometimes I'm like, oh my God, is this going to be a core memory? Is this going to be a belief? And you have to, it really is all about the repair with the child. Like the number one, and studies are coming out, the number one most important thing is the repair that happens after a mistake with a child. And so what you are doing in inner child work is you are repairing that relationship with yourself where you learned a different way than you actually want to be with yourself. And so it's really just full on repair.
Kate, in recent years, we've seen inner child work become quite the buzzword. Why do you think there's been such a rise in interest?
Oh my gosh, yeah. There's a rise in inner child work, shadow work. A lot of Carl Jung's theories are really making their way to the surface. And a lot of it has to do with the awareness of trauma and the understanding that it stems from childhood. Bessel van der Kolk, Body Keeps the Score, the Oprah Winfrey book, What Happened to You. These are all starting to inform us of just how impactful those childhood years are. And so now that we have this awareness and all of these studies that are coming out that show that the nervous system itself is actually from different schools, we'll say from birth to 7 to 12. I do include in utero because you are part of the mother's nervous system. But this is the way that I explain it, is your nervous system is taking in information and informing yourself for survival as you go through those ages. And so up until about 7 to 12, you are imprinting essentially on your nervous system these experiences that you have. So if you're not able to regulate in certain situations as a child and you're not able to move yourself through them, you're going to create a pattern, which is a behavior that keeps you safe. So then when you're an adult and this pattern is hardwired into your nervous system, you're an adult and you're experiencing an adult situation that mirrors the sensations of that childhood situation. And now you're enacting the pattern that was created to keep you safe. And so the inner child work helps you to interact with that inner child part of you who picked up the wounding, the pattern, the belief, and the nervous system imprint. And so why it's so widespread today and why it's gaining so much traction and notoriety is because it's rooted in some of this nervous system science. And it's stemming from a lot of these modalities and practices that have been around for a while, starting with Carl Jung and the shadow and the anima and all of that stuff.
That's very cool. And actually, it does remind me of another text. I have been a big fan this past year of Dr. Russell Kennedy's work with Anxiety RX, the book and podcast. And he is a medical doctor who takes a non-medical approach to healing anxiety, not just coping with it. And I love his approach because he is all about inner child, younger self work. He talks about many, many years that he had crippling anxiety. And the only way he could get to the root cause of it was to do this work, was to go back and reparent himself and plant new beliefs. And now he's teaching everyone else how to do that. So I love that that's the way you explain it, because it does bring to mind his work. And I found it to be so helpful in thinking about ways, and we'll get to this at the end, but ways that you can get in touch with that younger self and really start to have some compassion where there was none before.
Yeah, absolutely. And anxiety is a massive one where so oftentimes when we have anxiety, we don't know how to self-soothe through the anxiety. We don't know how to, and we just want it to go away. And that creates resistance in the body that heightens the anxiety. And so, this inner child work and the being with yourself in a different way in the face of something you've experienced before, you're rewiring your nervous system, you're changing and restructuring your relationship with yourself, and you're giving yourself the space, the love, and the capacity to show up in a different way.
Yes. So much yes to that. I love that. Thanks, Kate. Why is connecting with your younger self such an important part of the healing process, particularly for emotional and mental well-being?
If I were to have you think of one of your children or, a niece or nephew or, a child that's dear to you, and think about them in any type of situation that you've experienced in your life, you would mama bear. You would go into full on mama bear mode, right? But when it comes to ourselves, it is so hard to activate that because of the things that we've learned. And so when you start to view yourself as an innocent child, because we are, the brain isn't even fully formed until 25 years old. Like, let's be really honest here. We're children until 25 years old. We're not.
That's crazy.
Formed. I know. And I'm stretching it with saying we're children until 25, but you get me.
For the purpose of this analogy, yes, it makes sense.
Yes. And so, the reason that I say that is when you start to really connect with this younger version of you who went through what it went through, how can you not have compassion? How can you not fall so deeply in love with that child who had no idea what was happening to them, who had no idea that they were learning these different things and putting things into place to keep themselves safe? They're acting from survival, and that's you. And I think that, there will be some times when I'm working with a client and they're having a difficult time connecting with their inner child. And I will say, think of a different child. Think of someone that you're so close with, like a niece, a nephew, something like that, family friend that you have a close relationship with, and start there, and then maybe bring yours in and see them playing together, and just start to picture, like, when you bring the understanding of childhood and how that's when you're picking up all of these things and you're making them all about you because you know no other way. How can you not have so much compassion for yourself?
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to remember and a really good way to paint that picture for everyone. Jen, my therapist, again, in our sessions together, would often say to me, because I would go back and I would judge my child self from an adult place. I should have known better. I should have done this differently. And she would say, what if it were Rory, my daughter, in that situation? Or in some cases, Riley, who was the same age as I was when all of the abuse occurred. And she would say, would you be mad at him? Would you judge him for this choice? And it really puts it in a new perspective that, I have this conflict within of course not, but I know that I have for so long. And that's really the tension that takes time to work through in therapy or however else you're navigating that for yourself. But I love that you bring it to life that way because it really does create a new perspective, I think, for how to look at yourself in a different light and offer that compassion that you might not otherwise give.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And I guarantee you said you should have known better. Is that not the mantra for women, right?
Oh,
yeah. You should have known better. And so I just think that is that's going to be such a relevant phrase. And that's something that we pick up as children. That whether you're told, whether you intuit that, whether it's outright or covert or overt. And, those are the types of messages that you pick up as children. and you apply. And so, that could end up looking like that message alone, you should have known better. That could end up looking like perfectionism. That could end up looking like poring over a report that you have to do, like scouring for mistakes and expending yourself and getting so much anxiety before turning it in because you should have known better. Or going into work, getting your feedback and being so anxious over receiving the feedback because you should have known better. And so that's how it starts to show up in real life. And that's the underlying childhood message that plays out as an adult because you're faced with this situation of quote unquote being wrong or receiving negative feedback or what have you. And you should have known better.
That is a beautiful way to make that connection to what is often, I think, a real life example for so many. So thank you for sharing that perspective. What are some examples of how unresolved inner child wounds can manifest in adult life, whether emotionally, mentally, or even physically?
In relationships, we have a tendency as women to seek out the traits of our father, and as men to seek out the traits of our mother in our partners. This is not fully inclusive, and I'm well aware of that. But, in terms of all genders, like there's differences there. But typically, the men will seek out the traits of their mother in their partner, and the women will seek out the traits of their father. And so how that ends up in relationship is when you have a dysfunctional, unhealthy, or tumultuous relationship with your parent, and I'll speak for women because I am one. So if I had a difficult relationship with my father, that would feel comfortable and familiar in my partner. And so now what would typically be a red flag, verbal abuse, yelling at me, manipulation, let's just say that's the experience I had as a kid. It doesn't feel good to me. That's not what I'm saying. But what I'm saying is it feels familiar. And so there's that red flag of relationships of, I feel like I've known you forever. And yes, and yet you've only known each other for a couple of weeks. There's a woman, Christine Hassler. She is my mentor. She is who I learned the majority of this from. She's amazing. But she will often talk about how we tend to overlook red flags because they feel so familiar. We gravitate towards chemistry because that's what society tells us that we're supposed to be feeling. We gravitate towards chemistry because we're not familiar with safety. And so that's the juicy part when you're in these relationships. And so for a lot of women out there, you've experienced this. I know this because, we all have. And so if you're not aware of what you're calling in and you're not aware of how you're responding to those things and you're not aware of your relationship to them, i.e. the inner child and the lessons that you learned as a child, you're going to keep calling in that same pattern of partner because you're not healing the wounding that the original partner caused, which was your parent, your caregiver, your adult.
Wow. I mean, that's deep. I hope you just helped a lot of women out there who are still dating or, maybe
fresh out of divorce. Yeah.
Fresh out of divorce. I mean, whatever your stage of life.
The good news is, though, that doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to be in a toxic relationship. That's, and by the way, and this is a little off track, but toxicity, if you think of a frog, their toxin is not toxic to them. It's toxic in combination to a human being who is allergic to it or whatever we are, who can't have it, who it's toxic to. So there has to be that combination. It can't just be this you versus me. So when you're in relationship with someone and you notice that there is that polarity, you notice that there are the things that you're not speaking up on, and it's you not speaking up, you're contributing to that relationship. And so that's where you get to heal your inner child. And also, half of the time, those interactions are two inner children interacting.
Yes.
And so it's like your inner child is triggered by their inner child, and their inner child is triggered by yours. And so, so heal them.
Well, we support that. All about the healing. What are some common signs that someone might demonstrate that would indicate that they're disconnected from or neglecting their inner child in their day to day?
If you are finding yourself in recurring patterns that you're trying to break, and an example from my own life is I was noticing that oftentimes, like in dating, I wouldn't speak up for my needs. I wouldn't ask for better communication. I wouldn't speak up for what it was that I actually wanted because I had this underlying belief that I couldn't have needs, that, I was too much for having them. And so I would continue that pattern over and over again. And so I wasn't tending to the wounding of needing approval. I wasn't tending to the wounding of like needing to be something for someone else and being worthy in and of myself. And so when I started working with my own inner child and really giving her the approval from me and letting her know that I'm the one that's out there dating, you don't have to call in this partner, you get to stay safe and I'll take care of you. That's when I started speaking up. That's when I started having a different relationship with myself in the face of speaking up. And that's what inner child work is. It's you change the relationship with yourself in the face of something that's difficult. And so the second piece of this is when your response is bigger than the stimulus. So, and oftentimes, like sometimes there's anger that can be involved too, because as children, we're taught so frequently, even as adults, that anger is dangerous, anger is bad. It's, you are bad for being angry, hide it, it can harm, it can hurt. And what we're not taught as children is that justice comes from anger. Passion comes from anger. The need for change stems from anger. And so we miss out on the positives and we never learn how to fully process that emotion. We avoid it. We hide it. We're embarrassed by it. People have experiences with angry people that have led to harm and that creates this image. So like you're driving in the car and somebody cuts you off and you have this massive reaction, getting super upset. That's not about that car. That's not about that car. That's about all of the different times that somebody cut you off while you were talking, while you were wanting to do something you desired to do, while you were having all of these dreams and nobody let you do them. And so, and this is just a silly example, but what ends up happening is you have these bigger emotions to smaller things. And so when that happens, you want to start to look at who's driving the bus. What do you actually need in that moment? What are you asking for in those moments?
I think that's really helpful and a good way of thinking about it. And I was just actually in another conversation with Nicole recently, our hero for yoga and Thai body work and some of the somatic things we talk about on this show. We were talking about how just bringing awareness to the fact that you're having that outsized reaction and getting curious about it is such an indication that you're starting to heal, because we're so unaware sometimes that we have that outsized reaction. So noticing it and getting curious about where it's coming from is a really, really good first step in trying to unearth what else is really going on. And I think that's a great example of the road rage, because everyone's felt that at some point in time.
And a little bit of a lesser known is having a minimal reaction to a stimulus.
Oh, that's new.
When your response does not match the stimulus. So like witnessing a traumatic event and feeling numb, or like physically experiencing a traumatic event and not having a response to it. Or it doesn't even have to be a traumatic event, but like really decreasing your own response to something. And that's often because you've been taught that you can't have a big response, that you're not allowed to have needs, that you're got to be a certain way in order to survive.
Wow. Kate, building on what you're saying, how does a person know if their response doesn't match the situation?
I think that's such a great question. And many people aren't going to know because sometimes we feel so justified in our response to things. And this can look like, a deep fear of abandonment or rejection and the inability to experience something that may create those feelings. There's severe difficulty trusting others to the point where maybe you avoid situations or you stop yourself from being vulnerable. Struggles with self-worth and self-love, they stem from your beliefs around yourself, and then different things like self-sabotaging behaviors. These are different ways that they can all show up, especially when things like severe procrastination, when you are putting something off so much. And it's not just like light procrastination, like I could work through this if I wanted to. It's like I feel stuck and I just can't move through it. So when you're having these, especially when it's just something like me posting on Instagram,
it can be anything. I mean, I would literally write papers in college that we had 8 weeks to write, start the first word at 9 p.m. the night before it was due.
Yeah.
So many times. So many all-nighters. I just felt so stuck and I have time. I can do it later. I can do it later until finally I just had to sit down, and it was clearly not my best work.
Right? And imagine if you had just sat with your inner child and you were like, it doesn't have to be perfect. You don't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
Let's just get it started together.
Oh, Kate. Yeah, I feel that in my heart just as you're saying that. It resonates. It really does.
And that's the difference. Because meanwhile, you were probably sitting there like, I don't know what to write. It's going to be so stupid. I hate this project. Like, why? You know what I mean? And it's like, there's the self-judgment. And this just changes that. It's like, all right, I get it. I'm noticing it's here. I'm noticing you're here, little one. Hey, what do you need?
I got you, girl.
Exactly. Talk about having your own back, man.
For those listening who are new to inner child work, how can they begin to explore and tap into their own younger selves?
There's the work piece and the play piece. And we talk so often about working through things, and yet we never really focus on the play. And so whenever I am working with a client, what I will have them do is I will have them meet with their inner child and come up with almost like a menu for themselves. What are different things that are play-based that you used to enjoy as a child? It could be anything from jumping rope, swinging on a swing set, coloring, going to sing karaoke, dancing. It could be anything like that, so that you can tap in and bring your inner child along. Because how many of us stopped doing the things that we love because it wasn't cool, because we didn't have time for it, because we had to do homework? And so really allowing yourself to be childlike. And half the time, I'm even thinking about, and God love my mom, she was amazing. But I remember we'd be sitting around watching TV and she'd be like, everybody up, get out, everybody go do something. And it's like, I just want to sit and relax. And so maybe your inner child just needs to sit and relax and veg and watch TV. And so, it's just really getting in touch with the things that you weren't allowed to do as a kid, or I shouldn't say weren't allowed to, but the things that you stopped doing that brought you joy, and letting them light you up and tapping into that side. I have a doodle notebook, and I'm in the middle of this massive doodle that's taking me way too long, but and it's just something that soothes me, and I bring my inner child. So one of the work practices that you can do is alternate hand writing and journaling. So what you do is in your dominant hand, you ask questions, and in your non-dominant hand, you can answer them as the inner child. And so what I was going to say about my doodling is sometimes I'll use my left hand and let my inner child be part of the doodling. And so then what you can do is with the journaling, you can ask questions. And some of the best questions to ask: how are you? How old are you? What do you need? What do you want? How can I support you? All of those questions that just help you feel heard, seen, and understood.
Oh, Kate, I'm doing this tonight.
It's fun. And that's the thing is it gets to be fun. You get to explore yourself in a different way. And it's really cool because the journaling accesses the different parts of your brain when you alternate the hands. And so you really get to kind of unlock and see what comes and just kind of let yourself just almost Rorschach it.
I love it. No, I'm super into this. I'm really going to try it. I have been kind of a sponge trying to think of ways, again, to integrate my two parts of myself and to remember what it was like to be in my 8, 9, 10-year-old self's body. I've picked up tennis this summer, which is my play. I've really loved getting back into it. It gave me confidence as a kid, and it truly gets me outdoors, meeting with friends, and focused and running around, moving my body. So I have loved that, but I am constantly on the lookout of other things I can be doing. I know Dr. Russell Kennedy's like, put a picture of yourself when you were 8 or 9 up to really visualize you at that age. I've done that in a couple places. So yeah, this is great. Journaling, I do that anyway. So this is a really cool way of thinking about bringing the two together and maybe accessing more of that perspective that feels so hard to manifest sometimes.
Yeah. 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 I love having a picture. I actually have this little meditation space, and I have this blown up picture of me from childhood, and it's probably closer to like a 2-year-old image. And I think that's the other thing is get all the different versions of you. Connect with them all, because they all learned different things at different times and picked up on different things. And so what's really, really interesting and cool about inner child work is you never know what age is going to show up. So it's really encouraged to ask, how old are you? And sometimes a number will just pop up. For me, sometimes I'll get an age range. Like I'll be like, or sometimes I'll get multiple numbers. So it's like, these are the 2 times that it was reinforced. The thing about inner child work is really making sure that you don't make anything wrong. That you just, you just kind of trust that your body and your subconscious is just revealing whatever it feels safe and comfortable to reveal in whatever way it knows to reveal. And so, just not making yourself wrong, and really just sometimes just sitting. You can either do the journaling, you can look at a picture and talk to yourself and just pause after you ask questions and see what comes up. And really it's just all about restructuring the relationship that you have with yourself.
The thing I love about your answer is that this is stuff that anyone can do at home. It doesn't cost anything. It's really just remember what you enjoy, journal, find a picture. I mean, this is all like very basic stuff, and you can work with it over a period of time to see where it takes you, which I think is very cool. Very cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I love that too, because there's so much that you can do to bring that side of you forward and to get in touch with it.
If someone were to struggle with any of those exercises, or maybe they've done inner child work and have had challenges accessing their younger self in the past, what are some common blocks holding them back, and how can they begin to move past those?
So I do want to point out that trauma can play a part in having a block. And so while there are so many practices out there, and I will get to some of the free ones, like some healing has to be done in the safety of someone else, because the safety in yourself is not there yet. And that's, I've said it before, you've said it, the Healing Heroes is all about this. Safety is the number one container and propellant accelerator for healing. And if you're not there yet in your own body, you have to find someone that can help you feel that way, that can help you feel safe enough to explore, and someone that's trained. Now, that being said, oftentimes it is that safety piece. And so if you are not feeling safe with yourself to reveal, how can you work on making yourself feel safe? How can you, doing nervous system work? There are self-soothing exercises that probably feel so silly, but anyone out there with a baby, you try, if they're fussy, and this is a self-soothing for you too, but anyone out there with a baby, you can try doing horsey lips. And I'm going to do it into the microphone. So
oh gosh,
I'm
excited.
Yeah, right. So that's a self-soothing. So you really blow through your lips and you make them kind of like vibrate. Mm-hmm. That's a self-soothing technique. And then another one is humming to yourself, and so
I've heard this.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's because you're creating your own body vibrations. So you could self-soothe. That's one way. And another is just really creating a mantra of hand on heart, hand on belly, deep breathing, saying, I am safe. This is safe. What I'm feeling and experiencing is safe, because 9 times out of 10, you are trying to get rid of something rather than trying to understand it. And if your body knows that you are trying to get rid of something instead of love and understand it, it's not going to let you witness it, because it's going to create more harm. It's going to create more stuckness. It's going to create more resistance to the healing. And so whatever you can do to really create that safety in your body, to really create that space within yourself, to just let things be okay, the more that you're going to see yourself grow and heal.
Oh, I co-sign that so hard, Kate. So hard. I think that's absolutely right. And for those that are listening and wondering, how do I do that? Like, how do I find that safety and let myself heal? This is where I have to plug the somatic practices we talk about on this show, because I could not do that, Kate. If someone were to tell me a year ago, like, do all these self-soothing things, like try to feel safe in your body. A year of healing and I'm still not fully safe in my body. I'm still doing this inner child work with my therapist. Now, granted, I've come so far and I've experienced so much freedom and peace and joy that I never thought possible. Like, that's all there. But like, I know there's more to do. I feel myself getting triggered in certain situations. And I will tell you guys, one of the biggest plugs I can make is for those somatic practices that teach you how to get out of your head, get curious about what you're feeling, and start to feel like your body is a safe place again. And again, those are the things that we talk about on the show, whether it's acupuncture, myofascial release, breath work. I mean, you name it. Anything that really connects you to your body again and starts to open up those channels of communication between the heart, mind, spirit. Again, it's not just lip service. It really starts to work and allows you to access deeper parts of yourself and do the type of work that Kate is talking about here.
And the one thing that I would want people to really understand, and like, if there's anything you take away from this, it's that from the nervous system work and the inner child work, is if you are going into it, kind of like I said before, if you are going into it to get rid of something, you're not creating safety in your body. And as children, we learn that certain emotions are not safe to feel. We learn that certain experiences are not safe to have. And that's why we create those protection mechanisms. And so the more safety that you can cultivate within yourself to experience the incredible and the marvelous range of emotions that we are here to experience as humans, and allow yourself to have those sensations and make those sensations safe, the less you're going to start to worry about having them, the less they're going to stick around because they've been felt all the way through, and the less you're going to fear having them because you know that it's safe. If I feel anxiety now, my first go-to move is hand on heart, hand on belly, deep breaths. It is safe to feel this way. It is safe and okay to feel this way. The first time, whenever I'm feeling stressed out, overwhelmed, it's safe to feel this way. It's okay. You don't need to get rid of it. You need to change your relationship to it.
And I agree with that, Kate, because I think sitting in discomfort is such an important piece of this, and learning that those uncomfortable feelings are safe. And I think, sidebar, we can talk about this in another episode, but I feel like cold plunge is really popular for this because you're teaching your nervous system that, like, you're in this ice bath, but you're okay and you're safe, and you're training it to learn how to regulate and be slow and be at peace. And so that's another thing that I've started trying. And I do really enjoy a good cold plunge, but I think that's a really interesting tie-in to what you're saying.
Absolutely. And cold plunge and breath work are very similar because you, in a controlled environment, activate the fight or flight response, the sympathetic nervous system. So you're training your body to know that the sympathetic response is safe because you are in control of it. And when you experience, let's say you fell into an ice hole, instead of an ice bath, you fall into an ice hole, your body goes into the sympathetic response and you may panic. But now you're training your body to know that I am in control even when I'm in my sympathetic. And so, the reason that those are so powerful for your nervous system is because you create the conditions and you train your nervous system. And so it resets and recalibrates.
Well, speaking of, we did the episode on reset breathwork, and I think we're due for another, because that, again, guys, was one of the most powerful ways I've ever reset my nervous system. And that, complementing a lot of the other things I'm doing, I think is also highly, highly effective. So cannot plug that breathwork method enough. All right, Kate, this has been such an amazing conversation. But before we wrap, what would you say is the most important takeaway for someone just beginning to explore their inner child? Are there resources or additional tools you recommend for listeners looking for that extra support?
I would say the most important takeaway is that inner child work is, again, not about getting rid of. It's about restructuring the relationship. And the relationship to yourself, to your emotions, to your thoughts, to your actions. That is the most important thing. If there's nothing else that people walk away from, I want them to walk away with that. It is not about getting rid of anything. It is about embracing, creating safety, and restructuring the relationship. And then if you are hesitant to start with a picture. Start with going on a walk with your, hand on your heart and talking out loud. You can do whatever you want to bring your inner child forward. Start with play. That's one of the safest things, but it's the biggest thing that we avoid. Start with what you feel called to. That's how you build trust. Start with what feels right for you. We've given so many amazing tools. If one of them stuck out to you and you were like, ooh, I want to try this. Or even if you were like, I want to try this, but I want to do it this way. Do it. That's you. That's you telling yourself that there's something here. Listen.
I think that's great advice, Kate. And I think it's accessible and applicable to anyone listening. Kate, this was so much fun. Thank you as always for being here. I love talking to you about this stuff, and I cannot wait for our next conversation together.
Oh my God, I know, Chandler, you have the best questions, and being a part of this is it's such a dream. It's awesome. Thank you.
Oh, well, we're so glad you're here. And to those tuning in, if you enjoyed today's conversation, please share it with friends and don't forget to subscribe. You can also visit healingheroespodcast.com to get resources, meet the heroes, and share your ideas for future episodes. Thanks for listening, everyone. And until next time, remember, be curious, be courageous, and be kind to yourself. You've got this.